Welcome to Two Witness Teaching Program. Two Witness, a Bible teaching program to change and transform people. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Let's dive into it.
Song of Solomon, written by Solomon or perhaps for Solomon, but he is recognized as the king spoken of in this book. It's a poem written very poetically, written very differently from all of the other books of the Bible. And the theme of this book to show the progressive development between a bride and the bridegroom, and it leads up to the bridal procession. The purpose of this book, we're going to see, it's not just the story of a bride and a bridegroom. At face value, that's what we see. But symbolically, and this is really the meaning we want to gather from this book, it represents the love of God for Israel to the Old Testament Jew, and then also in the New Testament church to the saints today. So we want to see this as more of an allegory. We want to see the metaphors, that it's not just about a man and a woman, but it's about the love of Christ for his bride, and as the bride reciprocates and anticipates the coming of the bridegroom, just as we anticipate the coming of Christ. There are three speakers that are recognized in these 8 chapters. One would be the king, recognized as Solomon. One is the bride, or the Shulamite woman, and that's all the information we have on her. We don't know who she is. And then the daughters of Jerusalem, as they're called, the ladies in the palace, perhaps her ladies-in-waiting, who sometimes echo her or respond to her poetically. And the key, which is sometimes challenging, is to figure out who's speaking when, because it changes really without any indication. So as you read by context, you just get a feel for who's speaking, who's responding, and how the flow of the story is going. We won't read the whole thing. Like I said, we want to pick out the symbols so we can understand really what it means to us, how we should understand it. And we'll just start in the beginning, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. Because of the savor of thy good ointments, thy name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love thee. We're going to see things like wine and good ointment, and all things that were recognized as good or precious or something of value in the kingdom are the types of things they use to describe each other. So it's the best of the best. Verse 5, she describes herself, I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me, because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. So this is really the only physical description we have of her, is that being it seems a common woman and a laborer, that her skin was darkened by the sun. Now from here on out, the descriptions we have of her are things like her hair is being described as a flock of goats running down a hillside. That doesn't really give us a practical picture of her. Or her neck is like the ivory tower of David. Again, not practical, but I'm sure very poetic and very meaningful to her at the time, because she would have known the value of those things in the kingdom. So that's all we really know about her. Let's pick up let's go to verse 8. If thou know not, O thou fairest among women, go thy way forth by the footsteps of the flock, and feed thy kids beside the shepherd's tent. I have compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses in Pharaoh's chariots. So she's compared to horses here, which to her again would have been a compliment, because Pharaoh's horses would have been the greatest in the land. Thy cheeks are comely with rows of jewels, thy neck with chains of gold. We will make thee borders of gold with studs of silver. Now verse 12, she says, while the king sits at his table, my spikenard sends forth the smell thereof. And she goes on to speak about myrrh and camphor and clusters of grapes in the vineyard. 15, behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove's eyes. Behold, thou art fair, my beloved, yea, pleasant. And then, our bed is green, the beams of our house are cedar, our rafters are of fir. So, significance of that I don't know, maybe because most people didn't have the luxury of having wood in their houses, probably simple brick, so that would have seemed quite amazing and worthy of being recorded. She continues in verse 1 of chapter 2, I am the rose of Sharon, which is a place that was very well known for its roses, and the lily of the valleys, which was something very common and widespread. So interesting that she's described as something very specific and precious, yet something so beautiful that spread throughout all the valleys. As the lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. Let's go to verse 6. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand doth embrace me. And this comes up at least 3 times in this book, and just seems to be symbolic of the security she feels in his love. He is supporting her and embracing her. And it's always followed by this, verse 7. I charge you, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, by the roes and by the hinds of the field, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love till he please. And it seems to me, when we begin to understand her character and the relationship that she has to the bridegroom, that she is keeping herself pure for him. She does not want her desire, her passion awakened until her time to be presented to her bridegroom. And we're going to see that she is described by the king as undefiled. He calls her my undefiled. Another one, he says, there is no spot in me. She's described as pure. And it seems just as he is able to describe her in that way, that she herself strives to keep herself in that way as well and keep herself for her groom. It goes on to talk about the coming of spring and how they're out enjoying the coming of spring. The winter is past, the flowers are appearing, the crops are coming. Let's go to chapter 3. Here's an example of something that happens twice in this book. It starts out by saying, by night on my bed I sought him, whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. And she goes out into the city streets seeking him. Where is my love? And it appears to be that this is more of a dream, not that she's actually out running around the streets of Jerusalem in the night, which would have been considered a little risque for especially a pure woman. But because it says she's in her bed, it's at night, it seems she's dreaming, and she's seeking and searching for her love. But it seems she always comes back to that, his hand embraces me, his hand supports me, it's holding up my neck, I'm confident in his love. And it's going to end, these 2 dreams, in the end we're going to see it ends with this procession of him coming for her in his chariot with all of his guards. And it's very triumphal in the way that he comes for her. In chapter 3, verse 5, we see again, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love, till he please. Chapter 4, there's some of these wonderful poetic descriptions. Behold, thou art fair, my love, behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove's eyes within thy locks. Thy hair is a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead. Thy teeth are like a flock of sheep that are even shorn, which come up from the washing. 3, thy lips are like a thread of scarlet, and thy speech is comely. Thy temples are like a piece of pomegranate within thy locks. Thy neck is like the tower of David, builded for an armory. Verse 7, thou art all fair, my love, there is no spot in thee. So we see the characteristics of this woman. Not so important that her hair looks like a flock of goats, but that she's pure. And so we want to see this as a comparison to the church today. We are pure. He is coming. The King is coming for a pure, spotless, undefiled bride, just as the King is coming for his bride. Verse 12, this is what he says about her. A garden enclosed is my sister. my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. And I believe this is 3 ways to describe her own purity. I think in maybe Proverbs or other scriptures it talks about every man having his own wife, his own fountain. Here we see she's a fountain enclosed. She's not letting her love be stirred up until the time. She's keeping herself pure for him. This is what I see in this book, is that she is undefiled and she is striving to keep herself pure for her bridegroom who is coming. And I think that's how we need to see this and apply this to our lives today. If you go down to verse 13, you're going to see a list of very valuable items. An orchard of pomegranates, camphor, spikenard, saffron, calamus, cinnamon, frankincense, myrrh, aloes, all the chief spices, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. So the traits of each of them are being described using all that is best in the land. These are not things that the common people had access to or had the benefit of in their lives. So they're speaking the best of each other. Verse 5, we see again, she's out in the city. I suppose it could be literally, but I don't believe so. I believe it's more one of those stories where maybe she is dreaming, or it's just symbolic of her searching for him. And then it finishes again with another very detailed description of him. Some of them are very hard to picture. Verse 13, his cheeks are as a bed of spices, as sweet flowers. His lips are like lilies, dropping sweet-smelling myrrh. I can't picture that really, but we can see symbolically that she's speaking of good things. Let's see, in chapter 6, a lot more descriptions of how they look or appear to each other. Interesting, verse 8 of chapter 6. This is where Solomon is in his reign. He has 60 queens, 80 concubines, and virgins without number. That seems like a lot, but how many does he have later in his reign that we know from 2 Kings? 700 wives, 300 concubines. So here, he already has 60 queens in his harem, and yet we see he's adding another one, but he's so enraptured in his love toward her that this is able to be recorded as a beautiful picture of a love between this bride and bridegroom. Chapter 7. Verse 10, just choosing a few to read here. I am my beloved's, and his desire is toward me. And I believe that's a beautiful picture of Christ and the church. I am my beloved, and his desire is toward me. And I think we should be able to say that to Christ, just as he should be able to say that to us. Do we belong to him? Does he belong to us? We know his desire is toward us, but is our desire toward him? Do we have this relationship with him where we're striving to keep ourselves pure for him because we know that his coming is our end desire? It's what we desire above all things. Chapter 8, we see verse 6, set me as a seal upon thine heart, and as a seal upon thine arm. And a seal, especially to a king, meant that he was not just putting a stamp of approval, but his authority and his promise upon something. So he's setting a seal. Love is as strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. The coals thereof are coals of fire, which has a most vehement flame. So we see very passionate language here. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would be utterly contemned. So we see just again very extreme language talking about the depth and the beauty of love. It just ends with more descriptions. Solomon has a vineyard. Verse 14, it ends with, "Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like to a roe or a young hart upon the mountains of spices," which to me doesn't seem to have any spiritual significance, but again, part of the poetic language, showing the type of life that they led. And again, I think the key is using the best of everything to describe their relationship, and that she is keeping herself pure for her coming groom, just as we should keep ourselves pure for Christ, who is returning as our bridegroom. The book of Isaiah, and we want to put in context when Isaiah was living, when he was a prophet in the land of Judah, in Jerusalem. He was a prophet in Jerusalem, in Judah, at the time that Assyria was conquering Israel. So think back to Kings and Chronicles when we covered this historically in the times of the kings. You'll remember that Isaiah was there with the kings. He was with Hezekiah. In fact, he was with Hezekiah when Assyria comes against Jerusalem and lays siege to it, and how God delivers them. We already read that story. We're going to see now how Isaiah's account overlaps what we've already read, and so a lot of it will be familiar to you, but I'll just remind you of a little bit of it right now. During the reign of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah in Jerusalem is when Isaiah was prophesying. And this book, 66 chapters, a lot of emphasis on the coming of the Messiah, and he's quoted more in the New Testament than any other prophet because of so many messianic prophecies written here. The chapters are not recorded chronologically, so as we read it, it might talk about the Medes and the Persians, but it's during the time of the Assyrians, which was 100 years before. So we just need to keep in mind, if you go from chapter 15 to 16, it might be talking about different periods of time, for example. So this is during the time that Assyria was ruling the entire region. Israel was under tribute. Assyria came in, carried away the northern part of Israel. 13 years later, they take Samaria and the southern part of Israel. And then a few years later, Assyria comes to Judah. They destroy 46 walled cities. They take 200,000 captives. We already read about that. They stop at the walls of Jerusalem, and if you remember the story, the leader of the Assyrian army is taunting the people on the wall, and he's speaking to them in their own language because they want everyone to hear it and understand, and saying, "Why do you follow this God? Every other god of every place we have conquered did not rise up and save them. Why do you think your God is going to save you?" And really putting fear into the hearts of the people. Hezekiah turns it over to the Lord. He asks God for deliverance. Isaiah comes to him and he says, "Don't fear, because they will not take this city." And God sends, I believe, an angel who basically slays the entire army camping outside the city. So the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, is forced to withdraw, and God spares Judah until such a time they eventually will go into captivity to Babylon, years later after Babylon comes and overtakes Assyria. Does any of that sound familiar? Okay. Well, if you want some reference, that's back in 2 Kings 18 and 19, and also 2 Chronicles 22. That's the history behind much of what we're going to be reading. So, if we start in chapter 1, this is basically a book of God's prophet trying to help Judah be preserved, calling them to repentance, calling them to serve God and be spared. And let's just start reading. The vision of Isaiah the son of Amoz, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. Now we're going to see a description here of Judah's wickedness. "Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord hath spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel does not know, my people does not consider. Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord, they have provoked the Holy One of Israel to anger. They are gone away backwards. So this sets up the entire life of Isaiah as a prophet, as he's calling forth God's words to this sinful nation. Verse 5, why should ye be stricken any more? You will revolt more and more. The whole head is sick, and the whole heart faint. From the sole of the foot even to the head there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores. They have not been closed, neither bound up, neither mollified with ointment. Your country is desolate, your cities are burned with fire. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence, and it is desolate, overthrown by strangers. And verse 9, except the Lord of hosts had left unto us a very small remnant, we should have been as Sodom, we should have been like unto Gomorrah. And what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? Destroyed in judgment. God mercifully spared us a remnant so we would not be judged as our sin requires. Now in verse 10, he refers to Judah as Sodom and Gomorrah. Hear the word of the Lord, ye rulers of Sodom. Give ear to the law of our God, ye people of Gomorrah. Now he's going to chastise them for the sacrifices that they're bringing to him that are meaningless, because they're not doing it out of a pure heart, because they want to follow the ordinances of God in a way that would please him, but just they're doing it out of obligation, and God says, this is not pleasing to me. Verse 11, to what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, saith the Lord? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams, and the fat of fed beasts. I delight not in the blood of bullocks, or of lambs or goats. When you come to appear before me, who has required this at your hand to tread my courts? Bring no more vain oblations. You have just worthless sacrifices. Incense is an abomination to me. The new moons and Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with. It is iniquity, even the solemn meeting. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hates. They're a trouble to me. I'm weary to bear them. So we see that God is disgusted with how they're acting. They're does this sound familiar? Outwardly, they have a form of godliness, but they're denying the power behind their actions. Does God really hate the sacrifice? God designed the sacrifice so that they would have a covering for their iniquity. But the people were abusing it. It wasn't coming from a heart that was repentant or that was contrite before God. And God said, I hate this. I've had enough of it. Verse 16, here's one of our moral government passages. Wash you, make you clean. Put away the evil of your doings from before mine eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do well, seek judgment. Relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow. Come now and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword. For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. So here's the prophecy. It's all set up. Here's a wicked nation. Even your sacrifices, your festivals are an abomination to me. But here's your chance. It's your choice. Turn from your evil ways. Do what is right. If you're willing and obedient, he says you'll be rewarded. And if you continue to rebel, he says you're going to be devoured. And we know they will be devoured. Judgment's coming, and that's what we're going to read about. The rest of the chapter talks about the city of Zion that's going to be purified and redeemed. And Zion symbolically is Jerusalem, the city where God dwells. And we know, spiritually speaking, that God has redeemed his city. He has redeemed his people. Let's look at verse 25. I will turn my hand upon thee, and purely purge away the dross, and take away the tin, all that's impure in the middle. I will restore thy judges as at the first, and thy counselors as at the beginning. Afterwards thou shalt be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Zion shall be redeemed with judgment, and her converts with righteousness. And he continues on with, if you choose not to do this, if you choose to continue to rebel against me, you'll be destroyed with the wicked. So we see a beautiful account of God laying a choice before the people, as he always does.
Okay, I'm going to go to the board just for a second. And you may have to come with me. No, you don't. There's a theme that is reoccurring in Isaiah, where we see judgment for natural Israel and Judah. And out of this judgment is going to come something. Is going to come a spiritual kingdom, which is the church. We're going to see this in prophecy over and over again. They're being judged for their sinfulness, but the church will be pure and righteous. And we'll see many passages that refer to this. There's one coming up in chapter 2. In chapter 2, verse 1, the word that Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. It shall come to pass in the last days, and those are the days that we're living in, the church age, the gospel age, when God's covenant goes out to the whole world. He's not working through a specific nation only. That the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of all the mountains. A kingdom that supersedes all kingdoms. And shall be exalted above the hills. And all nations shall flow into it. This shows us that it has to be the time, the gospel age, or the last days he's talking about. This kingdom that's established where all nations will flow into it. And there's another reference to this in Micah 4, 1 through 3. If you want to note that in your Bibles. Verse 3, and many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations. Now here's a reference to Christ. And shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. And nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come ye, and let us walk in the light of the Lord. Now verse 4 can only be understood in a spiritual sense. We've all put down our weapons, and we're at peace in the kingdom of God. Right. We have peace. We're not fighting anyone in the natural anymore. We're not going to take up any weapons. Jesus told his disciples not to do that. He told Pilate, I think I was talking about this earlier today, my kingdom is not of this world. If it was, my people would be fighting for me. It's not. It's a spiritual kingdom. We're at peace. We're at peace with all men. So this is fulfilled in the spiritual kingdom. We're at peace with everyone. Now we're fighting wickedness, But that's a spiritual force that we're coming against, we're opposing. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to verse 10. He's going to start speaking of a day of judgment that will come for all sinners. Enter into the rock and hide thee in the dust, for fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty. The lofty looks of man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down. And the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty. There is a judgment day for everyone. And upon every one that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. Verse 17 again, the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. There's a coming day of judgment for everyone. Verse 18, and the idols he shall utterly abolish, and they shall go into the holes of the rocks, and into the caves of the earth, for fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. And this is the kind of language we find in the book of Revelation. At final judgment, people trying to hide from God. Some way, somehow, I don't want to face him. I know I haven't been living for him, and I know I'm sinful, and I deserve judgment, so they try to run away. And the day of the Lord, that phrase occurs over and over again, because there are days of judgment that have come in the past for entire nations, for people, and then finally there'll be one great day of judgment in the end where it will take place again, that people will try to run and hide from God. So this kind of language is repeated, and as all spiritual language concerning the day of judgment of God, which has its ultimate day at the very end when God says that's enough. This earth, this world systems cannot go on any longer.
Okay. Now, as that chapter ends, as chapter 2 ends, it's talking about the coming of the Lord and the fear of the Lord and the glory of his majesty. And verse 22 says, cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils. Wherein is he to be accounted of? Don't trust in man. This is not the time for that. And now pick up in chapter 3, verse 1. For behold, the Lord of hosts doth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff, the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water, the mighty man and the man of war, the judge, the prophet, the prudent and the ancient, the captain of 50, the honorable man, the counselor, the cunning artificer, and the eloquent orator. He says God is taking away the sustenance and support of man, described of as water and bread. But he says he's going to take away the kings and the rulers. He's taken away the authority of men and bringing them low. So just as he was saying, don't trust in man to save you, he says this time of judgment is coming upon you even now when men will fail you. Verse 4, I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. People with no experience, no wisdom. The people shall be oppressed, every one by another, every one by his neighbor. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. There's no order. A man shall take a hold of his brother of the house of his father, saying, Thou hast clothing, be thou our ruler. Let this ruin be under thy hand. They're seeking someone to rule them, someone who has the sustenance to be able to provide for them. In that day shall he swear, saying, I will not be a healer, for in my house is neither bread nor clothing. Make me not a ruler of the people. People don't want to rule. There's no rule at all. For Jerusalem is ruined, Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against the Lord, to provoke the eyes of his glory. No man will save them. The show of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. Just what was the sin of Sodom? How did they declare their sin? They were proud of it. They were doing it in the streets. They were chasing people down just so they could do it openly. Woe unto their soul! They have rewarded evil unto themselves. Say to the righteous that it shall be well with him, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. That's true. But woe unto the wicked! It shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. And it says, women and children are going to rule them. Weak, unqualified, being represented here. There will be no man that can save you or can spare you. Interesting, verse 16 picks up with the description of the women of Zion. And it's describing them, and unlike Song of Solomon, where a description of a woman or a man leaves you without a single picture in your mind, here you get a very vivid picture of what these women look like. In verse 16, they're haughty. They walk with stretched forth necks. So immediately you see them standing up straight and proud. They have wanton eyes. Their eyes are enticing you. They're batting their eyelashes. You can just picture a woman who's looking like this. Mincing as they go, or walking with short, delicate steps. They make a tinkling with their feet because of their jewelry. Therefore the Lord will smite the scab, the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion. Verse 8, in that day the Lord will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet, and their calls, which is like a hair netting, the round tires like the moon, their pendants, their chains, bracelets, mufflers, bonnets, ornaments of the legs, headbands, tablets, which I understand to be like a smelling box of perfume that would be worn on the body, earrings, rings, nose jewels, changeable suits of apparels, mantles and wimples, which would be cloaks, crisping pins, which is a small money bag that was worn on the belt, which would have been highly ornamented. The glasses, fine linen, the hoods and the veils, them with their mirrors, and you can just imagine, think of some of the Hollywood movies you've seen, like Cleopatra, or even like One Night with the King. You saw how those women were dressed. And if you add that kind of luxury to someone with a haughty spirit, a very proud heart, and you can just imagine what they look like and the enticement that is all about them. Well, God says, verse 24, it shall come to pass, instead of a sweet smell, there shall be a stink. Instead of a girdle, a rent. And a rent was a rope that a poor person would use just to hold their robe onto their body. So take away the fancy girdles and all the jewels and the chains, and they're just going to be held together with a rope. Instead of well-set hair, baldness. Instead of a stomacher, a girding of sackcloth. And burning instead of beauty. So they're going to be exhibiting signs of grief and affliction rather than of beauty and splendor. So God is going to bring them low as well. And it ends with the men. The men will fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war. And her gates shall lament and mourn, and she being desolate shall sit upon the ground. So Jerusalem is described as a woman sitting in sackcloth and mourning. And chapter 4 is going to pick up again with this idea that we just left with, the men having fallen in war and the women in mourning.
Okay, the last two chapters, the direct subject was Judah and Jerusalem, their sins, and the judgment to come. But we can see that the principles are the same with God to any people through all ages. And when we read these things, that they're proud of their sins, that they're living a life of luxury, and they're flaunting it, and they don't care about God, that their end will be, God has to bring judgment. He has to do it. He is the moral governor of the universe, and He has to bring judgment at some point. He can't let it go on forever. So that's what we want to also take away. We see this is really spoken of, the direct prophecy is to Judah and Jerusalem, but it also is conveyed on to future peoples and on to us and whatever society that we're living in. Right. And Jesus made this really clear with Isaiah's writings. He said, well spoke Isaiah of this people. No, Isaiah was not speaking of that people. He was speaking of his own people, but Jesus pulled it out from Isaiah and said, look, what Isaiah said matches these people as well, fits them just perfectly. And that's the ecbatic form of prophecy, something that's said in the past, and it was meant for one people, but can be used in the future for other peoples. And this is the same way with these judgments that are coming upon Judah and Israel. The same thing has happened to other people in the past, and the same thing will happen in the future to any wicked people. Okay, and continuing this on, the judgment that's coming to Judah, Jerusalem, chapter 4, verse 1. In that day, what day? The day of judgment. 7 women shall take hold of one man. Why? Because the men are dead. They've been conquered by, or enough of them killed by invading countries that there's going to be 7 women to one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel, only let us be called by thy name. Take us into your household. There's no men. And take away our reproach. In that day, or out of this judgment that's coming to Israel and Judah, something good's going to happen, though. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious. And this branch is going to be spoken of in subsequent chapters. It's Jesus Christ. Out of the judgment that comes, God has to judge his people, but God's going to take the remnant and make something out of it. And out of it comes the branch, Jesus Christ. The branch of the Lord will be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped out of Israel. The righteous that go through that and remain faithful to God, they will escape, and they'll be excellent and comely. It shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem, shall be called holy, absolutely. In the kingdom, spiritual kingdom to come, pure, righteous, holy. You can't be in it and not be. That's the difference between natural Israel. They had sinners in the kingdom. In the church, there are no sinners, because you're just not in. You may be among righteous people physically, but you're not one of them. God no longer talks about you as if you're his people, because he knows the difference. And you might be standing among them, but you're not his. So all his people he calls holy. And every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem, in the spiritual Jerusalem, when the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. The Holy Spirit, when he does his work in your heart, removes the sin from you, you're made clean and pure in the spiritual kingdom of God, in the new Jerusalem that we're all living in right now. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon our assemblies a cloud of smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night. What is that? God with his people, always. That's the way he was with Old Testament Israel. The cloud and the fire. Mm-hmm. He's in and among us, dwelling with us always. For upon all the glory shall be a defense, and there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat, and for a place of refuge, and for a covert from storm and from rain. God is our protection from heat, from weather, from anybody who would try to harm us. God will be our protection. He'll be our defense. And all of this prophesying of the kingdom that will come out of, it's going to be after the judgment of Israel and of Judah. Then will come the branch to start something new, the spiritual kingdom of God.
Chapter 5 starts with the parable of a vineyard. It's going to sound very familiar because parables such as this were used in the New Testament. And you'll find something like this in Matthew 21 if you look. Now will I sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard and a very fruitful hill, and he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof, and planted it with the choicest vine, and built a tower in the midst of it, and also made a winepress therein, and he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem, you men of Judah, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. What could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? He did everything he could do to make his vineyard productive. Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes. Why did this happen? And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof. It shall be eaten up, and break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down, and I will lay it waste. It shall not be pruned nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds, that they rain no rain upon it. So we see basically judgment coming upon the vineyard, because he did everything he could that fruit, good fruit, should have been produced, but only wild fruit, that which is defiled, useless, was produced. Verse 7, the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel. The men of Judah are his pleasant plant, and he looked for judgment, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry. Now verse 8 begins a passage where we're going to see 6 woes are announced here. A woe signifies misery, calamity, grief, and sorrow. That's what's being pronounced here. Verse 8, woe unto them that join house to house, that lay field to field till there be no place, that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. In mine ears, saith the Lord of hosts, of a truth, many houses shall be desolate, even great and fair, without inhabitant. Yea, 10 acres of vineyard shall yield 1 bath, and the seed of a homer will yield an ephah. So no matter how much land you acquire, no matter how much you plant, you will have very little yield. For instance, 10 acres of vineyard, and you're going to yield a bath, which would be 9 gallons of harvest. That's nothing. If you plant 11 bushels of seed, a homer, you're going to receive 1 bushel, an ephah, in return. So that signifies loss. It signifies God's favor is not upon you. Verse 11, woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, till wine inflame them. And the harp and the viol, the tabret, pipe, and wine are in their feast. But they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands. Now verse 13, it's interesting because he speaks of this in past tense, though it hasn't happened yet. Therefore, my people are gone into captivity. He's prophesying it's going to happen, but it's very sure and finished in the mind of God. Because they have no knowledge, their honorable men are famished, their multitude dried up with thirst. Therefore, hell hath enlarged herself, and opened her mouth without measure. How many people can hell hold?
Many as want to go.
As many as want to go there. It'll keep enlarging itself. The gates of hell are not limited. Anyone who wants to go there is going to fit.
And it's something there.
Yeah.
Proverbs 27:20. Hell and destruction are never full.
Very good. Proverbs 27:20. Thanks. So Isaiah 5:14, therefore hell has enlarged herself and opened her mouth without measure, and their glory and their multitude and their pomp, and he that rejoices, meaning pride, shall descend into it. So who goes to hell? Those who are glorifying themselves instead of God. Those who are proud in their own hearts and lifting themselves up apart from God. 15, the mean man shall be brought down, the mighty man shall be humbled, the eyes of the lofty shall be humbled, but the Lord of hosts shall be exalted in judgment, and God that is holy shall be sanctified in righteousness. Is God righteous in the judgment of sending the wicked to hell? Absolutely. Absolutely. Verse 18, woe unto them that draw iniquity with cords of vanity, and sin, as it were, with a cart rope. And I understand this to mean, after meditating on it, that they're actually trying to pull themselves deeper into sin. They're not trying to get out. They're going in deeper and deeper and deeper. By their own choice, they're actually working at it. In verse 19, they say, let him make speed and hasten his work, that we may see it. Let the counsel of the Holy One of Israel draw nigh and come, that we may know it. They're defying him to execute the judgment that he is threatening to bring upon them. Now, if that's not proud, I would be so embarrassed in the day of judgment if I was the one saying, yeah, bring it on, and it comes. I imagine you'd be very humbled, but at a time when it's very much too late. Verse 20, here's another woe. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. And I think that's also in Proverbs. I'm not sure what that is. They put darkness for light and light for darkness. They put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink, which justify the wicked for reward, and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Or they're not passing righteous judgment. Well, verses 24 and 25 show the judgment. Therefore, as the fire devours the stubble, and as the flame consumes the chaff, so their root shall be as rottenness, and their blossom shall go up as dust. Why? Because they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people. He hath stretched forth his hand against them, and has smitten them. And the hills did tremble, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the streets. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. Remember that last phrase, we're going to see that over and over and over. His anger is not turned away. Let me start over. For all this that's already coming upon them, his anger is not turned away. His hand is stretched out still. That's not the end. There's more coming. More judgment is coming. Now the rest of this chapter, from 26 to 30, prophecies of nations that God is going to rise up, come from far, and take over Israel, or Judah, in judgment. Verse 26, he will lift up an ensign to the nations from afar. And an ensign is mentioned several times too. That would be the flag or the banner that army is marching under. He will hiss unto them from the end of the earth, and behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. Hissing, I learned this was really fascinating. Hissing was what the keeper of the bees did, and that hissing or that whistling would cause his bees to follow him and return to the hive. So Assyria is described as a swarm of bees that God is going to call out and bring them and lead them to Judah. Now if you go to chapter 7, verse 18, we'll get there in a few minutes, but if you want to mark it, he compares Assyria to bees, and he says, I'm going to hiss and call them forth. And he speaks specifically in verse 20, the king of Assyria is who I'm calling. So maybe not, spiritually significant, but I thought that was interesting language, that he is going to hiss or whistle and call them forth like a swarm of bees. They're going to come swiftly. I'm in Isaiah 5:27. This is the army coming in judgment. None shall be weary nor stumble among them. None shall slumber nor sleep. Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. Nothing is going to prevent them from coming. They are coming with strength. Their arrows are sharp, their bows are bent. Verse 29, the roaring shall be like a lion. They shall lay hold of the prey and carry it away safe, and none shall deliver it. So we see in this distress and calamity that's coming upon them, there will be no consolation. It's coming in swiftly, and it's going to destroy. So we see this actually happens in Isaiah's time, that Assyria comes and carries away Israel. We see it happens 100 years later that Babylon comes, swift judgment. We even see the Roman armies in 70 AD coming in, swift judgment, all at the hand of God. It's God who sets up kings and brings down kings. And you can't read the Old Testament and not see that God had his hand in the working of the nations. What was it all dependent upon? Are you serving him? Are you not serving him? If you're serving him, you're dwelling in that safe place. If you're rebelling against him, then the judgment will come. And God will use one of the surrounding nations to judge, most times.
Mm-hmm. I want to draw something else. And I think it'll be useful for the next chapters. We'll be referring to this map many times. I think it'll help keep things straight if you're not really familiar with the kingdoms that are surrounding Israel and the ones that God is going to use to judge Israel and Judah. And if I, draw this kind of a thing. And this is the sea, the Mediterranean, and we'll put Judah here as the southern kingdom. And we have Israel here to the north, as the kingdom is divided. And then we have Syria here. We have another people called Assyria. Remember not to get those confused. We're going to have a people that rise up after them, Babylon. And then we're going to have the Medes and Persians after them. And I think I'm generally in the ballpark of where even the people are located of these three. And then Egypt here to the south we see is going to be referenced many times. And we've read a lot about judgment that's going to come through Assyria to Israel, and even into Judah, all the way up to the siege of Jerusalem. But the king of Assyria doesn't break through there. God's promised that won't happen. And subsequently, Babylon will take Judah captive. So we want to have that map up as we go forward. We'll be referencing it. God's telling all these things hundreds of years before it happens. Hundreds of years before those peoples are any real power. This time, in Isaiah's time, Assyria is coming, is making Israel and Judah pay tribute to them, and they're coming through to invade Israel. But there's no Babylonian threat, but they're going to be spoken of here. God's going to tell us, or tell them, that Babylonia they're going to defeat the Assyrians. And then even beyond that the Medes are going to take down the Babylonians. I mean, way out there in the future.
The Medes and the Persians weren't even known or heard of. They weren't any powerful force or anything, but
it's amazing.
Many years ahead of time, God tells the people they're coming.
Right. And because He's orchestrating that as a judgment to one people group to another.
Now, I think it's important that we understand the book of Isaiah in context like this, because much of what we hear on TV is these end times preachers who go to the book of Isaiah and pull something out and say, see, Babylon's going to do this, and they start putting modern day names on it and say Russia